Welcome to our presentation about intergenerational trauma and colonial impact on Indigenous people in Canada. Our agenda would be understanding intergenerational trauma and its impact on future generations. Indigenous groups were self-governing and prosperous prior to the arrival of Europeans, but colonization brought about terrible conditions such as high rates of prejudice and persistent adversity in adulthood. It had a devastating impact on Indigenous peoples, like their cultures and well-being. Policies like the Indian Act, residential schools, and the 60s coup, combined with historical traumas like war, epidemics, and massacres, have had a lasting impact.
Indian Act. The Indian Act is a federal law of Canada that governs issues including Indian status, bans, reserves, and cultural traditions. The Act established restrictions on status based on gender, controlled alcohol intake, and decided who was eligible for support.
The Canadian Indian residential school system, which operated from the 1880s to 1996, was created with the intention of assimilating Indigenous children into Canadian mainstream society. Indigenous children were forcefully removed from their families across several generations.
Next, moving on to the 60s scoop. The 60s scoop was a chapter in Canadian history where many First Nations and Métis children were forcibly taken from their homes and communities, leading to the adoption of thousands of Indigenous children into the non-Indigenous homes. This practice took place between 1960s and the mid 1980s. The term 60 scoop described how children were essentially scooped from their communities.
The Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada was established in 2008 to promote peace among Canadians and unearth the truth about the residential school system. Thank you all for listening to our presentation.